Well, good day, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jim Dimanis. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Rock Advisors. We have a great and very interesting topic, amenities for a new generation, latest trends in apartment design. We have the pleasure of having with us Brian Chamberlain, the founder and CEO of Chamberlain Architect Services. Brian, how are you?
I'm great, Jim. You?
I'm just great. Really excited about today's topic. Very timely. There's new construction going on everywhere, and the apartment business really is really taking off. So, Brian, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, a bit of a background of your experience, and then we can delve into this great presentation you put together.
Sure. It's really an exciting time for designers and developers in the residential or apartment market. The whole market is shifting and changing as we speak, and we're going through that significant change right now. And what we at Chamberlain have been doing for the past number of years is practicing what we call integrated project delivery. And that means that we're a group of project managers, architects, and constructors, and we integrate the design with the construction and with the control and flexibility of the project in order to achieve all of the developers or owners' goals on their projects. So the other thing that's significant is that there's a shift or an increase in the quality expectations of people that occupy your buildings. And their expectations are higher, but there's also starting to be a cross-pollination between different types of living. And that means that extended stay hotels are starting to look and feel more like homes. People in apartments and other residences expect more of the amenities that they would get in a hotel, and the social spaces are becoming more and more significant in all sorts of residential buildings, be that extended stay hotels, student residences, apartments, condominiums, etc. So that kind of sums it up, I guess, in where we're heading today.
Sure. No, that's great. Well, first slide here, millennial renters, marketing to the generation of choice. Obviously, this Generation Y, and they're having a huge impact on the marketplace, throughout the entire market, but clearly specifically to what we're talking about today. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about millennials and how is it that they are impacting the residential apartment business?
Sure, Jim. The millennials, or as they're also known, Generation Y, are the largest consumer group of both the present and the future. And while you can't generalize 100%, basically millennials were born between 1982 and the year 2000. And there's pushing 100 million of them in North America. And that's something like 30% of the North American population if you give the total population of Canada and the United States to be roughly 350 million. So it's a 7% larger consumer group than the boomers, and these people have money to spend, 2.45 trillion annual spending power. And in only 4 short years, their spending power will surpass the boomers. But maybe just a quick comment on something else, too, that
Sure.
This is a very, very important market segment, but another one that's really starting to impact the design and development of residential projects is what has been called flying solo generation or group of people. And that group of people crosses all generations from the very young to the very old. And what's happening is that more and more people are either living alone or choosing to live alone, and that goes right from those people that are not yet married because they choose not to get married and until later in their life. It applies to people that never ever want to get married and stay single all their life. It applies to people that are no longer married, either through the death of a spouse or divorce, etc. So that's another significant market that we're seeing today. And one of the reasons it's very significant is that it crosses all the boundaries of the different generations, be it millennials or whatever. So very large age group spread in that. But certainly millennials, very, very big impact on the market today.
Sure, and I guess it'd be fair to say that you really have to take into consideration the demographic that you're building for, and that speaks to design. And so I see here on the slide we're talking about the actual units. And so Brian, while you're explaining this to our audience, maybe I can just encourage you to think about the landlord that might be listening in that is looking to build maybe a luxury apartment building in downtown Toronto or an urban center, and what kinds of things go into the design. You talked a little bit about demographic, and then how does that lend itself to the kinds of finishes and those kinds of things within the unit?
Yeah, well, I think maybe just an aside comment. Obviously, you have to design and develop or build to a target market. That's a very key basis for the successful realization of any project. Now, and it's important for many reasons. One, you have to hit the right market, but you also have to convince your lenders that the project that you're doing is going to be viable. So it becomes very, very important that you do a demographic study or a feasibility study similar to the many studies that, Jim, you've done at Rock.
Sure.
And we look at those studies as architects to get the mix of units, the size of units, and the number of amenities or the type of amenities that are going to be in there. So very, very important thing to get your ducks in a row in terms of your building programming based on the demographics and the feasibility study, both for your own success but also for, in Canada, CMHC lending or your bank. Now, yeah, what the trend is also to go to smaller units focused on 3 dimensions rather than 2 dimensions. And space is not a 40-foot living room carpet. That is to say, a 2-dimensional measurement. It's 3 dimensions. Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing in the industry today is ceilings getting higher, 9 feet, and we're just recently in Chicago looking at some residential buildings down there, and they go as high as 10 feet in some cases. And the advantage of that is you can really get the much more spacious feeling without spending more money on the actual horizontal dimension.
Right.
And it's also very, very important that you lay out this space, that you plan it properly, that you do the most with the space you've got, so that the when you walk in, the feeling is of spaciousness and brightness and airiness, as much window as you can get, etc. Better finishes are demanded by people, and we went through a period of time where everyone was starting to do concrete floors. In other words, they just polish or stain the concrete floors. But we've tended to move away from that because we found that people really enjoy the warmth of wood flooring, for example. But to offset that particular cost, in many cases of high-rise structures that are built out of cast-in-place concrete, the actual undersurface of the concrete slab above you is being left exposed. And that's been quite acceptable to the market. Granite, stainless steel, hardwood floors, cool kitchens, cool washrooms, unique fixtures, and the key is you've got to do your research and you've got to source your FF&E, your furniture, fixtures, and equipment that's going to give you the most design bang for your buck and provide value. It's not just a matter of going out and spending money. You have to put something in there that has value to your tenants. We're not seeing any apartments being done without washers, dryers these days, and usually they're stacked for space conservation. And the whole trend is to have spaces perform multiple functions. In other words, not just a living room or just a dining room or just an office, but spaces that can be used in a multifunctional way. Of course, technology and connectivity is extremely important, and the size of desks, cabinets, etc. required for that connectivity as we move to the wireless environment is becoming less and less. So less clutter and less space required for that.
Yeah, you know, as I'm listening to you describe, you know, these smaller, you know, units, I can't help but think that we've borrowed a lot of this from the hotel world. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Oh, very, very much so, Jim. We design and build under our integrated system a lot of hotels, extended stay and normal hotels, limited service, full service. And yeah, it's very interesting that the trend that people want the convenience and amenities that they see in the hotels. In fact, some hotels have set up entire divisions where you can buy hotel FF&E, furniture, etc. And some examples of that, I don't know whether you remember, but a few years back, someone came up with a bright idea that if you're going to put a shower rod in a standard tub, you should bow it outwards to give more room, elbow room, shoulder room to a shower. And a lot of hotels now are selling those to their clients. They're selling furniture, they're selling bathrobes, they're selling slippers.
They're selling beds.
So they're selling beds.
Yeah.
So
preferably not used ones, but yeah.
Yeah, preferably. So yeah, the hotels are finding that a significant retail market to augment their income from their core business. So yeah, it's and we're seeing in a lot of the mixed-use projects that we do where we have apartments and or condominiums and hotels in the same building, that the occupants of the apartments love that, because if they don't feel like cooking that night, they can just call down for room service. And if they have a friend or family come into town, they can put them up in one of the hotel rooms. And in many cases, they can use the amenities that are in the hotel, be that fitness areas, pools, restaurants, bars. So yeah, there's a real cross-fertilization going in and or going on between the hotel industry and the apartment industry, and the lines are really getting very blurred.
Yeah, it's interesting, but clearly, you know, the apartment industry is benefiting as a result. I don't, you know, typically I don't like to delve into, you know, very specific issues or details, but I need to, since I've got this world-class architect on the line, so to speak, with me. Brian, one of my pet peeves when I walk into an apartment unit, and a lot of our apartments here in the GTA are, you know, they were built in the 70s, so not a lot of forward thinking relative to design, and not really the design isn't really conducive to what I would say is sort of this North American lifestyle. In other words, we live in a 4-season country, and yet you walk into these places and the closets are just, well, they're pathetic for the most part. I mean, you've got sort of that bar, and that's it, where you're supposed to hang your jacket. But you know, what about closet space? What about, I mean, you talked about storage, but what's going on there, and anything new and novel relative to design? I mean, you as an architect, when you're looking at this stuff, what's going on there?
Yeah, storage is really key. There's nothing more frustrating than having a place that you can't put your stuff. And as an aside, it's kind of interesting in closets that you can present occupants with, say, 15 lineal feet of closet space, but in a conventional manner, meaning not a walk-in closet. Or you can hand them 12 lineal feet of clothes hanging area in a walk-in closet, and every time they take the walk-in, even though there's less space. But that's a psychological thing. But you can't ignore the emotional part of people that are renting apartments, and that emotion goes from the moment you enter the lobby to the moment you enter the actual suite. So you have to, that emotional impact, that wow factor is very significant. But to get back to the closet issue, there's a lot of things you can do for to expand your closet space. And one of them is, now I'm 6'2", so I don't have any trouble with the double rotted closets. In other words, you hang the lowest one at about 44 inches, and then the top one's about another 44 inches or 42 inches above that. So that's about 7 feet, and I can reach 8, so that's not a problem for me. However, the key is the hardware, because you can buy hardware now where the upper level rod actually moves down and moves out in front of the lower rod, so you can access those the upper rod easily if you don't happen to be the same height as I am or some other people are. So the other thing is that you cannot ignore or pass up an opportunity for storage. And that means that every piece of furniture, every bit of wall, there should be no cavities behind it that aren't used for storage. And this becomes extremely important in the new smaller spaces. And what's happening is that when we design those, we use storage areas as modulators of the space. In other words, a storage area, storage unit will be used as a visual and in some cases acoustic divider between various areas of the apartment. And I don't say rooms necessarily, because with the trend towards more open fluid space, sometimes there aren't separate rooms. But those storage areas can be used to modulate the space and give you a lot more storage, obviously, and also be used in a secondary creative way. So, yeah, we do have the 4 seasons. There's no getting around it, and what we're finding too is that to manage the seasonal clothing requirements is another issue. For example, we have some units where it takes a little bit of your time, but come springtime, you take your winter heavy clothing and you fold it into containers, and these containers are stored under beds and other locations, which is basically waste space right now. And that then frees up your closet to take the container out from under the bed and hang your summer clothing up in the readily accessible closets.
Right. Well, now we move into the shared or social spaces, or the common areas, the amenities. You know, somebody said, and maybe it's become an old adage, but people they sleep in their units, but they live in the building. They live in the apartment building, and so the social spaces, the amenities, are becoming that much more important. And I think this speaks to an earlier comment you made relative to the demographic, but also those folks that aren't married or don't have a partner, and they choose to live alone. And so these shared and social spaces perhaps become even more important, because it gives them an opportunity to meet other people. In some instances, maybe they meet somebody on a Thursday night in the gym, and it's a date for the weekend. I mean, these kinds of things happen, right? So it's the social spaces, amenities, very important. What can you tell us about that, Brian?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. And it applies to hotels or apartments. Used to be that hotels just kind of provided a cozy cocoon for business travelers to sleep in, but that's no longer the case. They want to get out of the rooms, go into the other areas of the hotels, and really any area of a hotel can be a social space or even a business space if you provide, for example, in elevator lobbies, the soft seating that you just get a casual meeting and you meet someone up at the elevator, you can sit down and chat. But obviously the restaurants, the lobbies, and those spaces are very, very important. And you're right, as the trend towards flying solo gets larger and larger, people want that social interaction. And sometimes it's not necessarily for that date, but just to sit down and exchange ideas with people.
Sure, sure.
So yes, the design of the social spaces has to be trendy. There has to be a variety of them so that you can have larger groups that gather and socialize. You have smaller, more intimate areas that two people might sit down and have a drink or chat. And it applies not only to the indoor spaces, but the outdoor spaces as well. And I know, as you mentioned with the clothing, we have 4 seasons, but the trend is for more and more outdoor living, even in the shoulder seasons and in some cases in the winter seasons. Well, with fire pits and radiant heaters, we're finding that the use of the outdoor spaces are being extended. And you know, if it's a reasonably nice day, even though that is to say it's sunny, and even if it's cold, it's enjoyable to put on your coat and go outside and sit around the fire and have a drink and talk to people. So.
Sure.
So yeah, the social. I can't overemphasize the importance of the social spaces, both indoors and outdoors, with any development.
Sure. You know, here at Rock Dala, when we're doing feasibility studies for developers or merchant apartment builders, you know, we spend a lot of time addressing the common areas and the amenities, and lobbies, of course, are included in that. And sometimes, you know, those developers who have not done purpose-built apartments, they're surprised to hear us when we tell them that, you know, if you're building a luxury apartment building, a purpose-built building, your common areas, your lobbies actually have to be even better than those that you would find in a condominium building. And they're almost shocked. They just don't understand that. And then, of course, we have to explain to them that, you know, that lobby is a sales tool, and that lobby is going to be selling those units for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And so you have to have a really nice lobby, and you have to have amenities that are going to appeal to people that are going to be spending $1,800, $1,900, $2,200 per month. I mean, you need to have that to compete against the condominium building that might be renting units, or owners that have invested in units that are renting those units. So would you agree with that, that, you know, that the amenities have to be as good, or if not even better?
Definitely. I think the significant change we've gone through is that rental apartments used to be for people that couldn't afford homes or condominiums. Now they're for people who choose to rent rather than buy. And certainly the type of people that are now renting, and the millennials especially, they expect that quality. And I'm kind of the opinion that I think that the quality of construction of rental apartments if it doesn't already in the new marketplace exceed that of condominiums, I think it soon will.
Right. Security. You know, obviously that's a very, very important factor. Whether you know it's in an apartment building, condo, a home, what have you. What's going on from a security perspective? Again, you know, as an architect, when you are designing an apartment building, how does the design lend itself to having a more secure premises, and you know, and beyond just sort of locks and cameras and things like that, but just the design of the physical space? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that parking garages as a key example, because that's always been a major area of concern for security. And you know, prior to today's market, they tended to be kind of dark, dank, low-ceilinged, low-lit, uncomfortable areas. And what we're doing right now is we're placing as much design emphasis on the parking as we are on lobbies. And by design, I just don't mean efficiencies. I'm talking about the whole aesthetic view of the parking garage, so that it's bright, it's colorful, it has an airy feel to it, and the wayfinding is simple. Security cameras, as you mentioned, are always key, as are security pull stations, but a lot of glass between the elevator lobbies that go to the parking lot and the parking spaces themselves, so that that area kind of lights up as a beacon. It assists wayfinding. A lot of colors used within that lobby and outside that lobby, and just a lot of color used everywhere in the parking garage itself. So, yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on technology and security, and that's necessary and good. But in terms of the layout, what we try to do is eliminate as much. We don't want any small nooks and crannies. We want it to be open. We want it to be visible, so that there's no place that someone can lurk, and that generally people feel a lot safer there.
Sure. Green living, obviously, you know, issues around sustainability, energy management, simply being, you know, good stewards of the environment, and then of course that translates into, you know, more efficient HVAC systems, lighting. Then that translates into LEED standards, green standards, and so forth and so on. Obviously, that's a part of our world, and so it should be. But you know, that also translates into a level of expertise that's required. In some instances, perhaps more capital outlay in the beginning in order to facilitate the installation or the design of these green components. But hopefully, you see the payback from an operating perspective. But yeah, please talk to us about it. This is a very, very important topic, and I think one that you know, a lot of people don't know very much about, apart from what perhaps, you know, marketing or advertising tells them.
Yes, I don't think that we're having the conversation about whether sustainable design is a good thing or a bad thing. I think the tipping point has been reached on that, and generally speaking, everyone has bought into that, whether it's individuals, developers, municipalities, etc. In fact, we hardly see a project coming out of a municipality these days that doesn't require that the building meets certain LEED levels of gold or silver or whatever. But it's important to remember that LEED is just a system of evaluating the sustainability in a building. LEED is not sustainable unto its own. It's just a system. And you can design a building that is has fantastic sustainable features without it being certified under LEED.
That's a good point.
The only reason that you might want to certify it is so that you can say that people that are going to rent there have some benchmark that yes, it does have sustainable features. But it's expensive to get LEED certification, but if you feel that's important from a marketing standpoint, or in some cases bragging rights, then sure, go ahead. But keep in the back of your mind that in order to be sustainable, you don't have to have LEED, and LEED is not applicable to all developments. Some of the points that you get for LEED in order to accrue enough points to be silver or gold, etc., are based on issues that don't apply everywhere. For example, if you have a bicycle rack, you get X points. Well, that's not too applicable in Inuvik, maybe with the winters. If you mean materials from within 500 kilometers of your site, you get so many points. But and that's great for areas like Southern Ontario where a lot of manufacturing takes place, but not maybe so useful for places like Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. So, but yes, the other thing to remember is that a lot of people think that sustainability means energy conservation, and it does. That's one of the aspects, but of the whole list or categories under LEED or sustainability, that's just one aspect of it. And when we design buildings, we look not only at capital or first cost, we look at operating or long-term costs, because the reality is that the operating costs of a building over the life of the building will exceed the capital costs of the building. So it's very important. Now, that's not to say that sustainability is free. It's not. There's certain architects have been designing buildings environmentally for years. In other words, you try to take advantage of wind and sun and moon, but you can't always control that because certain sites have a certain orientation and there's nothing you can do to change that. But still, using some of the natural sustainable or environmental issues are desirable. I know in our own office, which is designed sustainably, part of the reason we did that, and part of the reason that we have two-story office space and lots of natural light and opening windows is due to staff retention. In other words, our human resources are our most important aspect of our business, and we want to attract and retain the best talent. And if they can come to work every day in a place that is bright and airy and pleasant and leads to social interaction and communication in the business environment, then that's a plus. So, yeah, I mean, it's here. The first thing, if you're going to develop an apartment, is yes, let's decide on the level of sustainability that you want. Let's reach the perfect balance between capital costs and ongoing operating costs, because that balanced solution is what's going to make sense both now and in the future.
Sure. Now, niche amenities. I love this. Pet-friendly, pet washing stations, green space allocated for a dog run, bark park. I've never heard of that one before. But in the U.S., obviously, in the more sophisticated buildings and in the larger urban centers, I mean, this is a big deal. Having areas for your pets is a huge win for a developer or would-be developer of apartments. So and you talk about here roommate-friendly suites. This is really good stuff, and I think it'd be fair to say that this is really geared towards more of an urban market. Maybe I'm wrong, But yeah, please talk to us about this, because this is huge. And as far as I'm concerned, here in Toronto, in Canada, really, this is cutting edge. I mean, we don't see a lot of this happening.
Yeah, the dual suite thing is important for many reasons. I know in my own home I have in effect 2 master suites, and it's very important in rental accommodation, because there are some people that choose not to live alone, but maybe it's their roommate is not their house or whatever. And historically, when 2 people rent an apartment, there's always been the argument, well, I want the master suite, I want the good bedroom or whatever, and they either have to arm wrestle or flip a coin to see how that resolves. And
yeah.
Kind of interesting. Sometimes the richer person will say, okay, I'll pay extra on the rent. I'll pay whatever, 2/3 of the rent if I can have the master bedroom. So the issue is that it's more and more appropriate to have, in effect, 2 master suites. In other words, 2 bedrooms that have the same size, the same washroom amenities, the same windows, etc. So, and that applies into student housing as well, where some student housing models have 4 or 5 bedrooms sharing a common living kitchen area, and it's very, very important that all the bedrooms be the same size and have the same internal amenities. Otherwise, you can have people fighting between trying to get the nicer bedroom. So yeah, the design of those the internal design, of those suites are very important. It's interesting to note that the pet-friendly movement, if I can call it that, it's also a social issue, and not just for the dogs, but for the people. And a lot of people take their dogs to these dog parks, and the same dogs and the same people are there all the time at the same time, and they generate friendships there. Sometimes it's, well, hey, why don't we all get together on the weekend or whatever. So it's important to remember that the dog parks are there for the dogs to get some exercise and do other things that dogs do, but it really is a very important social space for the actual people that are out there with the dogs, because they all have a common bond. They all love dogs. They all have dogs, and they have a common thing to talk about. And while the dogs are having fun, they don't want to sit around and be bored. They want to interact with people and talk about their dogs and their dog problems, etc. So, yeah, very important social space. And as the units get smaller, obviously it's more and more important to have that amenity for your pets.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this brings us to the end of what I think is a phenomenal presentation. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot. I do have two final questions, though, for you, if you will. First off, if I am a developer, would-be developer, how do I go about, give me some advice, how do I go about choosing an architect? If I want to build purpose-built apartments. So that's question number one. And question number two, how do I contact you if I want to get in touch with you and I've got questions, or I want you to help me design and build an apartment building?
Well, the answer to that, both those questions is the same.
Okay. You are modest.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of talented architects in the world, and I remember once talking with the chair of a selection committee for architects, and at the end of the day, he said, you know what I instruct my board or my panel, my selection panel to do is, he said, if we assume that they all have, roughly the same technical abilities and design abilities, then choose the one you like. Choose the one that you get along with, or you think you'll get along with, because this is a consensus building partnership over a long period of time. It could be 1 year, it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, who knows, depending on the size of the project and the approval process. So that's number one. But again, I think choose the one that you think has the ability to deal with public presentations, with submittals to the municipalities. The entitlement, as they call it in the U.S., and approval process is becoming more and more significant. And sometimes just getting your permitting can take more time than building the entire building. And it's expensive, and that's a kind of a sad comment, I guess, on where we are today in terms of timing. But also look at an architect. It's not enough to be a great designer or a great technical architect anymore. You have to have the ability to deal with all the stakeholders, because the stakeholders are no longer just the developer and the people that are going to rent the apartment. It's all the municipalities, the planning departments, the councilors, and everyone in the community. Because like it or not, you're going to go through public presentations and get public feedback. And a lot of this feedback will be contrary, and a lot of it will be someone's bright idea will be another idea that someone doesn't like. So we in our office use what we call Building Information Modeling, or BIM. It's a three-dimensional software that allows us to construct the building in cyberspace prior to actually having go out on the site. And there's a lot of advantages to that, both in terms of resolving potential conflicts within the design, but those drawings can be used to do three-dimensional walkthroughs or fly-throughs for both the developer, because you've got to remember that everyone's not as skilled as architects are in reading two-dimensional plans, but also for the stakeholders, for the planners, and for the city for the approvals. And it's a great source of information for the marketing. And you have to have a personality that allows you to go to these public meetings and present the idea well, communicate what you're trying to do in terms of the advantages of the community. And then I guess lastly, deal with someone who's done the research on what's trending in apartment design, because doing the same old thing you've done all the time isn't going to cut it in today's market. So you have to stay with the market, but more importantly, you have to stay ahead of the market. And we devote a lot of our time to research, both online research, which certainly helps, but just traveling around to different areas of Canada and the United States to see what's happening, traveling to Europe to see what's happening there. So that would be my advice. As far as contacting us, you can go on our website, which is ChamberlainIPD.com, IPD being Integrated Project Delivery, which I alluded to earlier, that we practice a collaborative team approach to real estate development. Or you can call us at 905-631-7777, and we'd be more than happy to come out and talk to you, have a look at your site, and give you a preliminary evaluation of what the possibilities are, both in terms of developing the site from a physical sense, but also any issues on entitlement and approval. And we have a package that we put in. Because we're both architects and builders, we know what construction costs are. Like, I'm talking real-world construction costs. So we can very quickly put together a design and construction package for you that tells you exactly what it's going to look like, tells you what it's going to cost, and that's very useful data when you're going to the pre-consultation meeting with the city, when talking to your bankers, etc.
Great. Well, Brian Chamberlain, thank you very, very much. Once again, great presentation. I found it to be very useful. I learned a lot. And for those who are listening today, I'd just like to tell you that, we here at Rock and Dalla have had the good fortune to work with Brian on various projects, and we have found him to be nothing but top-notch, cutting edge, always ahead of the curve. And if you are looking for a Class A architect who, as Brian has stated, is so important, who gets along, understands the importance of building relationships, he's your guy. So, Brian, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Jim, and thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This great presentation. I'm going to have to move quickly through the sales information, but once again, thanks to realtrack.com for the following sales info. So to date, we've had 76 sales, represents 2,500 some odd units, total value $274 million. Average price is creeping up, so the average price per unit now is $130,000, and largest transaction, 680 Roselawn Avenue, $17 million. Highest price per unit, $380,000. These are big numbers. In terms of the transactions, clearly primarily in the GTA. So let's get into some of the specifics here. My apologies, I'm going to have to move through this fairly quickly. Here's the 680 Roselawn Avenue, obviously a great area, $17 million, $260,000 per unit purchase price. We've got another multifamily here transaction on College Street. Once again, really good area, $1.9 million. Looks like it might be a redevelopment play or just a lot of upgrades going on or will be going on. St. Clair Manor, $350,000 per unit. At those prices, you can build brand new. So it just shows you what's happening with the marketplace. Roehampton Avenue, $240,000. Jane Street, a bit of a different area, different demographic. So, but a price per unit, $48,000. That's actually that's fairly low. I thought it'd be higher, even for that particular area. But good, solid building. Now we're into Simcoe, Ontario, where you can still buy things, as Derek Lobo likes to say, by the pound at $71,000. So the outlying areas, though, as well. I mean, Simcoe, Ontario, we're at $70,000. So again, that's getting up there, getting close to that $100,000 mark. Cambridge, well, speaking of $100,000 mark, we're at $96,000 a unit. Wow, Cambridge, Ontario. Waterloo looks like a newer construction, $81,000. And actually, that's one of our guys. That's Brad McGill with Rock Advisors. Vanier, Ontario, $121,000. So clearly, we are seeing a trend that is going on in the outlying areas outside of the GTA, and we are at or surpassing that $100,000 mark. Ottawa, $100,000. Great market in Ottawa. $83,000 on Selkirk Street. In St. Catharines, Ontario, $33,000. So I guess generally speaking, we're seeing prices continue to go up. We are hitting prices on a per unit basis where you can actually build for the price that people are buying. There's Brian's contact information. So I guess the slide got confused. So we apologize to Brian, but here's his contact information. That's great. So now you can actually see it. If you got a pen handy, please write that information down. We have some great upcoming webinars, so please check out our website at rockadvisors.ca. And we always look forward to hearing from you if you have any ideas or suggestions for us. And again, we're always looking for good people that we can co-broker with. Finally, I'd like to talk about our symposiums that are coming up, May 6th and 7th, Canadian Apartment Symposium Series. This is our third year. We're in partnership with Media Edge, downtown Sony Center. You don't want to miss it. We've got some great speakers. Brian's actually one of them, and he's moderating a panel on I believe, the new apartment construction symposium, which is on the 7th. And of course, for those of you who are interested in student housing, that's happening on the 6th. We've got world-class speakers, and we've got people coming in from all over North America, so Canada and the U.S. Again, we're going to be talking about some cutting-edge topics, and we're going to go deep on these subjects, really deep. So you actually walk out of there having learned a lot. And the venue is such that it lends itself to having some good, healthy conversations with people if you have some follow-up questions. That's it. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.